مصلحا ومجددا فارنوا بنظر طاهر وجناني.
Assalamu Alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, dear viewers. Today with us we have our beloved brother Abu Bakr, and we will hear his story of how he became Ahmadi. I actually met brother Abu Bakr in London a few years ago, and I was really inspired by his knowledge and his passion for the true Islam Ahmadiyya, and I'm really excited to hear his story today. Assalamu Alaikum, dear brother.
Wa alaikum salam, Brother Razi. Honored to be here today. So I should talk?
Yeah, the stage is all yours, brother.
So usually what you do is you ask people about their background and a little bit about themselves. And then towards the end, I noticed that you ask them to tell why should somebody accept Ahmadiyya as the true Islam. And with your kind permission, I would like to do that process first, because in my mind, my story, whether it is told or not, my story had been told to many people around the world, and you know, maybe it will be remembered, maybe not. But if there's anybody listening who is not an Ahmadi, and the people who are not Ahmadis, Muslims, I'm speaking about Muslims, Muslims who are not Ahmadis are of two types. One, they are just hateful, ignorant, unknowing people who have never read a single book or a single sentence by the man who claims to be the Prophet Messiah. These people, they're useless. There's no point in talking to them. Their hearts are hardened. They're blind. They're deaf. They don't hear. The Quran has given the verdict about them. But there are some other Muslims who they will tell you, I have Ahmadi friends, and my Ahmadi friends, they're pretty nice people, but you know, I'm a Muslim and I don't believe in this Messiah business and Jesus business and this Caliphate business and so on. Those are the people I would like to say a few words to, inshallah. And I pray, before I start speaking, I pray that Allah, the opener, may open up the hearts and minds of these individuals who might hear my words. And please don't listen to my words, but pray to God that God should tell you if these things that I'm saying are true or not. This is the ultimate test for any believer. If you say that you're a Muslim and you believe in God, whether you're a Muslim or a Christian, although I'm talking to Muslims, if you believe in God, Allah is the one who does everything, then ask Allah to guide you. Allah will never misguide you. You know, the Christians say, our Father who art in heaven, guide us into the, you know, lead us not into temptation. And now the Pope wants to change. How can we expect God to lead us into temptation? That's insane. And so now the Catholic people are trying to rearrange that particular prayer. So likewise, we Muslims, we believe that Allah guides to the straight path. Which path? It's the path of those upon whom He has bestowed His blessings. And by the grace of Allah, I'm sitting in a mosque right here on Highway 70 in St. Louis, Missouri. There's a highway which runs almost all the way from New York, Philadelphia. It goes almost all the way to the west coast of America. We have a big minaret, and the highway is only about maybe 75 feet from where I'm talking to you right now. And before 9/11, many times the Muslims from Libya and Egypt and Saudi Arabia, they would come by, they would see the mosque, they would go to the next exit, turn around, come back, and they would come inside the mosque. And they will offer their prayers. They were very happy to see a masjid. And I would give them some teas, water, whatever they needed. And then I would ask them, I said, my dear, I'm a convert to Islam. I don't know Arabic. Can you please help me to understand Surah Fatiha better? They would say, yes, yes, of course, we know everything. I said, brother, when we say Anamta Alayhim, what does it mean? And they give long explanations. Oh, Allah has given us many blessings, and He has given us good house and family, and so on and so forth. All of that is true. I said, but Allah says in the Holy Quran, and these are those upon whom Allah has bestowed His blessings, namely, Nabiyin, Sadiqeen, Salahin, martyrs. Okay, so you understand what I'm saying? That God has promised us prophets, truthful, martyrs, and righteous people. These are the blessings of God. They are spiritual blessings and not material blessings. And do you know that in all these years of asking Muslims these questions, there have only been 2 or 3 who have given the correct answer. Most Muslims in the world do not understand the meaning of Surah Fatiha. And you all who don't know what I just said, you just go and read the verse in Surah Al-Nisa, chapter 4, verse 70 or verse 69, whichever one it is, and read it for yourself. Allah says these are the blessings. So I'm trying to say to you that you have been raised in an environment where your mind has been poisoned, or you have been misinformed about the teachings of Islam. And so we have the spectacle today of the ISIS people, the Boko Haram people, who commit atrocities in the name of, they cut the throat of an innocent person and shout Allahu Akbar. Now, you don't have to be a scholar to know this cannot be the teaching of our Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, having said that, when we come out of sajda, we say Allahumma kfirli warfa anni. So we say, Allah, raise us up. And I'm going to the issue of Jesus being alive in heaven. Now, the very idea that some of you who are intelligent, educated, scholarly people believe that a human being who used to eat food would be alive in heaven is so ridiculous that it just staggers the imagination. That anybody who is a Muslim would even entertain such a concept. All of you know the story of Hadhrat Umar when he lost his mind when the Holy Prophet Muhammad passed away, and he said, anybody who says Muhammad is dead, I'll cut your neck. But Hazrat Abu Bakr told him, those of you who worshipped Muhammad know that Muhammad has passed away like all messengers have passed away. Now, not a single one of the companions stood up and said, oh, wait a minute, Abu Bakr, you're making a mistake. So at the end of the day, I live in Missouri. I'm basically a Missourian. We have a nickname for the state of Missouri. We call Missouri the Show Me State, which means that you have to demonstrate with your actions who and what you are. So I challenge all of you, if you have never been to an Ahmadiyya mosque, go. You don't have to pray behind them, just watch them. Of course, now we have this pandemic thing going on, and if that is not one of the signs of Allah, look how Allah has taken the so-called greatest nation on earth, and with a small thing that you can't see with your eye, He has turned everything upside down. Be patient. There's more yet to come. All right. Now I want to say it. So I'm going to leave you Muslim people to your own devices. The book has told you what to do. Read your book. Now, regarding the Christians, I was raised in a Christian society, although I was never a Christian. But when I go to church, sometimes some of our family people or some of our friends, when they pass away, we have to go to the church to watch them have their funerals. The carrying on, how these Christian people worship a man who told them in his book, in the book that they read, why dost thou call me good? There is none good but the Father. And when the Jews asked Jesus, Master, tell us, which is the greatest of the commandments? And here I want to tell you, for more than 20 or 30 years, I've asked Christians this question, and you should try this yourself. When you ask a Christian, when the Jews asked Jesus, peace be upon him, what, Master, tell us, which is the greatest of the commandments? What did Jesus answer? Do you know that 90% of the Christians will give you the wrong answer? Don't take my word for it. Do this survey yourself. The correct answer is, Hear, O Israel, thy Lord, thy God, is but one God, and thou shalt have no other gods before him. nor shalt thou bow down to him, or anything that's above in the heavens or the earth or beneath the sea. For I, thy Lord, thy God, am a jealous God. This is clear. The Bible is clear. Jesus said, Eli, Eli, sabachthani, oh my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And this is the only words that Jesus actually spoke. There's nothing in the Bible that everything is in English, Greek, or Latin. But the only Aramaic in the Bible is Eli, Eli, sabachthani. Oh my God, why hast thou forsaken me? So I urge my Christian friends to stop this paganistic worship of a man. This is idolatry. Jesus can't help you any more than he could help himself. It was God that helped Jesus. And I don't want to get into all the details. I suggest you read Jesus in India. You can get it online from I'm sure Brother Razi will give you the website. Now, the last thing I want to say is to my black and white brothers, regardless of what religion they are. You know, right now, our country, not only our country, but the world, is facing a crisis of racism, black and white. And when you see the brutality that the Europeans impose upon the people of color, whether it's African blacks or Asian blacks or any kind of people of color, it is horrible. And it has been like this for I don't know how long. And it has to stop. Now, I understand the rage of my black brothers. And I know exactly what the people call looting and burning and rioting. I know why they do that. And there's a purpose behind it. But it's not the way. And you're talking to somebody, and I'll tell you in a few minutes, who knows for sure it's not the way. This is a long-term struggle. And as you can see, the world is turning. And I assure you that the first shall be last, and the last shall be first. It is written in the books. You have to be patient. We're in this struggle for the long haul. So I hope that what I said makes some sense to you. Now, Brother Razi, if you don't mind, I will introduce myself by saying that my name is Abu Bakr Ladd. I was born in Germany in 1948 to a redheaded German mother and an African-American soldier father. German is my mother tongue, and I grew up in Germany until about the age of 8 or 9 before I came to the United States with my parents for the first time. Afterwards, my dad was a soldier, and since my mom was German, always he requested to be stationed in Germany. So I spent my formative years partially in Germany, partially here in a place called Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. And those of you who have not been to Missouri, Missouri is a very beautiful place with running streams and many rivers, and it's a wonderful place to grow up as a young boy. Now, other than to say what I just said, who I really am, I will quote to you in a little booklet that I wrote, and let me read it to you. As a young man, I read a book by that enigmatic African-American writer, Frank Yerby, who wrote a book called An Odor of Sanctity. It's the story of a noble young man torn from his people and forced to live among savages as a slave. His nobility won out, and he overcame the conditions he was subjected to. And he escaped his status as a slave, but along the way to freedom had to encounter many challenges to his humanity and to his innate sense of holiness. Thus, the life he had to live and the choices he confronted always denied him the holiness that he sought. But he always carried with him that odor of sanctity. Like the fictional hero of Frank Yerby's novel, I too dream of nobility and holiness, but all that I can achieve is an odor of sanctity. And so that encapsulates the story of my life. I've always been an avid reader of adventure books, histories of wars. But by the time I was in the ninth grade, I'd read every book in our library at Fort Leonard Wood about the Civil War, the Revolutionary War, the Crusades, Grimm's fairy tales, 1001 of Arabian Nights, all the Carter Brown detective novels, every book about the Korean War, the Second World War, literally hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of books. This is before I ever entered left the ninth grade. As I advanced through high school, I had some teachers, and I still pray for them today, particularly Mrs. Choate, may Allah bless her soul, who always nurtured me and built me up. And I remember Mr. Garzelli and then Russ Robinson in college and Mrs. Merrill. They were all teachers who took a special interest in me and tried to provide me with additional books and studies outside of the mundane schoolwork, which bored me to tears. By the time I went to college, and I went to a small Southwest Missouri college called SMS, Southwest Missouri State College, where I became the spokesperson for the Black Student Union. And the reason they made me the spokesperson was because the guy who was the president, he didn't want to get in trouble. But I had no such concerns about getting in trouble because I was passionate about social and racial justice. And of course, in the 60s and 70s, America was rife with racial injustice and racial strife. And so, sure enough, I was expelled from the university in my junior year, and I went on the road. We call it on the road. Back in those days, there were thousands, if not millions, of young people like myself, all looking for a way to change the society, just as we see the young people today. And God bless them. I hope that they achieve what we did not. And so, in the process of being on the road, I became more and more radicalized, thinking that the only solution to this criminality and this fascism that I saw all around me was to fight, to take arms and have an insurrection, which is, of course, according to the American Constitution, is what we're supposed to do. That this is why we have a right to bear arms, and why all the people on the right and the left are adamant about keeping their guns. Because at the end of the day, as long as we have guns, it would be difficult for the government to just do anything they want to do. Because there's a zillion guns out here, and some of these people will use those guns. But anyway, I was of that mind, and so reading the books of Che Guevara, and by the way, when I was expelled from college, I was drafted. But I had done a research about Vietnam because one of my history teachers, Mr. Gibson, I asked him one day, I said, this was about 1964 or 65, and Vietnam was just starting to percolate. And I asked him, I said, what is all this Vietnam about anyway? Because I wasn't sure. I was reading the propaganda in Time and Newsweek magazine. He said, oh, Udo, he said, that's a very good question. He said, why don't you give us a book report? And so I did. I began to research the Vietnam. I found a book which I recommend to all of you who want to really understand the history of Vietnam. It was a book called The Battle of Dien Bien Phu, Hell in a Very Small Place. And I'll think of the author's name in just a second. But the name of the book is The Battle of Dien Bien Phu, Hell in a Very Small Place. A wonderful book. And the book made it very clear that the Vietnamese people were the heroes in this whole story. They were fighting for their independence and for their freedom from their colonial oppressors. Both the Vietnamese fought against the Chinese, fought against the Japanese. Then the Americans and the French convinced them, help us fight the Japanese and we'll give you freedom after the war. So they did, and of course the French didn't keep their promise. You know, the white man speaks with a forked tongue, as the Indians say. And of course, America supported the French to suppress the Vietnamese people. So by the time I was kicked out of school, and then of course they drafted me, I told them, hey, I'm not going to fight nobody about this, okay? Naturally, that made me a criminal, and so I had to go on the road and try to get away from these people. So I told them, hey, catch me if you can. I'm not volunteering for nothing, and I'm not going to jail, you know, just because you want me to. So I went on the road. As I became more radicalized, I began to attack the operations owned by Standard Oil. And so in the process, I got shot. I got shot in the back. And it's a very interesting story about what happened during my getting shot in the back, because that was my first religious experience. In fact, when the bullet hit me in the back, I fell into a deep, dark hole with no sides on either side. And as I was falling down into this hole, I realized when I hit the bottom, wherever the bottom was, I would be dead. And so as I fell, I screamed out, whether in my mind or in person, I don't know. I said, oh my God, not like this, because in my mind, I wanted to die as a revolutionary hero. I didn't mind dying, but I didn't want to die as a criminal or an armed robber or whatever. And so I always envisioned myself being killed in a shootout with the police. But here I was falling into this hole, and I screamed out, oh my God, not like this. And bam, I hit the ground. I was still alive, although the bullet was between my fifth vertebrae, right stuck before it penetrated. I still have the x-ray today. So after some time, I was taken to a very secure jail. And from the very first moment I went to jail, I had the intention of escaping. I did not want to die I was going to die as a free man, no matter what. And due to a number of very strange circumstances, I managed to escape from the jail, jump over the fence, hide all day in a soybean field, and make my way to Mexico. From Mexico, I eventually wound up in West Africa. Now, the reason I was in West Africa is because I was still in my mind on this determination to fight this government. And so I was looking, but I knew I didn't have any military training. I needed some combat experience. So I decided to join the Rhodesian Liberation Army. That in those days, now it's called Zimbabwe. In those days, the Africans were fighting against these white British people, and I was going to help the Rhodesians fight these British people. So I looked at a map, and I'd been hitchhiking all over the country. And so I realized, okay, I can just hitchhike down the coast of West Africa. I wound up in a place called Gambia. Now, in the meantime, I had tried to hitchhike down the coast. I went to Morocco, but when I got to the south of Morocco, the desert was just too big, and I didn't see how I could possibly hitchhike across this desert. And so I met some white kids with big trucks and four-wheel drives and gas tanks and water tanks and stuff. And they said, man, no, you can't hitchhike, man. This is, you know, we couldn't even make it. So I went back. I managed to raise up enough money to buy a ticket for myself and my younger brother, and we flew to Gambia. And from Gambia, I was going to hitchhike or take boats or whatever down the coast to Rhodesia. Well, 2 weeks after I got to Gambia, somebody stole all the money I had. So now I was stranded in Gambia with no money with my little brother. So before, when I had money, I had a lot of companions, and I was buying them drinks and entertaining them and whatnot. And now when I didn't have a place to no money, I said, who can, host us for a few days until I manage something? So one boy said, let me ask my uncle, Mr. His name was Seka, Fode Seka. God bless his soul. So he allowed us to stay in his compound, which was called Seka Kunda in Bakau, Gambia. And so while there, one ex-policeman, taxi driver now, named Sergeant Jane, may Allah exalt him, he gave me a small plot of land because the food in Gambia is a very poor country, it still today is. And so I was able to grow some lettuce and some things to supplement my diet, because the rice and peanuts was killing me. So I was down to 145 pounds or so. So anyway, one night as he took me home, We stopped by the ocean there, and he said, you know, my name was Daniel. That was my forged name on my passport. That's another long story. And so he said, you know, Daniel, he said, if you want to stay in our country, you should become a Muslim. And when he said that, my heart started pounding like I just had a shot of double espresso coffee or something. And I said, look, I don't know nothing about this Muslim. He said, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. There is no God but Allah. Muhammad is his messenger. Now, by this time, in my travels in Morocco and talking with many people of all type of intellectual and spiritual conditions, and sleeping on the beach of place called Tarazout. I slept on the beach of Tarazout in Morocco. There was no lights, nothing. I slept about maybe 50 yards from the ocean, and so all night long, I would look at the stars and I realized I'm laying on top of this planet, and you know I'm on this ball in the universe. It's moving around. The thing is moving around the sun. The whole thing it was just, you know, too mind-boggling for me. I realized, man, if anything goes wrong by 1% or 0.5%, this whole thing will fall apart. There's got to be there's an intelligent design, an intelligent creator who created all this. And I accepted the fact that there was an intelligent being, an intelligent creation behind all this. So by the time the man said to me, there's only one God, I was ready to accept. I said, well, I already believe in one God, but I don't know nothing about this Muhammad. But if Muhammad teaches La ilaha illallah, I accept Muhammad. If I learn something about Muhammad I don't like, I can leave Muhammad because my faith is only in one creator, one God. And it was at that level of ignorance or understanding about Islam that I embraced Islam and took the Shahada in Bakau, Gambia in 1973. Now, I want you to, as I tell the story, please remember what I know about Muhammad. Nothing. So I went to the local mosque. I took the Shahada. They made me shave all my hair and my beard and everything. And I put on somebody made a white dress for me, and I repeated the words, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. And the people were very happy. The people of Bakau treated me very wonderfully. And the very first day, I met one gentleman. He said, my name is Alfonso Demba. He said, I'm the ex-honorable of the first Parliament of Gambia. If you want to learn about Islam, come to my house. I will teach you. So every night for about 6, 7, 8 months, I would be in this man's house. He liked to smoke. I would bring him sugar. And then we would make a tea called Jambakatang. So I never caught malaria. And all those people who live in Gambia, Senegal, hey, y'all stop taking that white man's medicine and use what God has given you. I guarantee, look at me today. I guarantee you that Jambakatang is the best anti-malaria medicine. And don't, Bill Gates has spent billions or millions of dollars trying to get you all a vaccine. Hello, God has given you Jambakatang. Leave Bill Gates alone. You hear what I'm telling you, right? Okay. So anyway, then he taught me every night. And so after about 7, 8, or 9 months, I should back up. So I wanted to read the Holy Quran in English. So I asked this boy, Musa Seka, in whose compound I was staying, do you have a Holy Quran in English? He said, yes, we have a new school. Now watch this. You see, if you ask God to guide you, God will surely guide you. It just so happens that the third Khalifa, may Allah raise his status in paradise, had opened up a school in Gambia called Nusrat High School. And this boy was one of the first students to go to that school. And the principal of that school is today in Minneapolis. Assalamu Alaikum, brother. And so they brought me this Holy Quran, which I paid for $5, if I'm not mistaken. When I read Surah Ibrahim and Bani Israel, all my previous readings made sense to me and helped me to understand the history of both Christianity and the Jews. And I knew now why Islam had come. So after some time, I realized, oh, I have to back up one more second. So in those now, you know, when somebody becomes a Muslim, they don't become a saint overnight and they don't change all their habits overnight. So I still like to smoke marijuana. I used to smoke a lot of weed. And unlike Bill Clinton, I actually inhaled that stuff. So one day I was at some Nation of Islam, black Muslim guy's house, smoking some weed. And there was a brother there who told me this is not good. This you should not. Islam does not allow this thing. And I said, man, I read the Quran. It doesn't say anything about smoking no weed, brother. He said, no, you don't understand. That young boy was Baba Tarawali. And all of you who are Ahmadis know what I'm talking about. May Allah bless him. But that Nation of Islam guy had a book. Now, let me tell you what the Nation of Islam does. At least they did it in those days. He had a book. The first 3 pages of the book were torn off. The book started with Nafsi Amara. I said, man, I got to read this book. He said, no, brother, you can't have my book. Anyway, I said, brother, look, I have got to finish reading this book. And so I read the book. I had never, the book was beyond my actual understanding. The little that I did understand was too mind-boggling. And I knew that if I could somehow explain this book to the people of America, that I could go back to America, and I was a radical rabble-rouser. I would speak to large crowds of people. And I knew if I could just give this information and what I knew from the Holy Quran up to that point, if I could explain to the people of America what Islam is, all these racial problems, all this racial strife would disappear, because the people would change. Once they understood Islam, they would change. I was naive, but I was sincere. And I really believe up till today that eventually this is how the racial strife, not just of America, but of the world, will take place. However, it takes people who are willing to change themselves. Nobody can change you from the outside. You have to change yourself. So anyway, make a long story short, I read this book and I decided I would have to go back to America to face whatever I had to face here in America. And so, and so I didn't have any money. So one Al-Haji, he borrowed me $84. And with this $84, I took off from Gambia and I hitchhiked across the Sahara Desert, through Senegal, through Mauritania, up to Morocco, over to Spain and France, and then up to Germany. It's a very interesting journey, and I don't have time to tell you about it right now, but God willing, I will someday. Anyway, so when I got to Germany, one last one. Before I left Gambia, I asked Musa, my young friend Musa, I said, look, where can I go to learn, like a college or someplace where I can learn more about, this Islam, so I can properly teach it? He said, well, go talk to our missionary. So he took me to Banjul. It was called Bathurst in those days. And there was a missionary there by the name of Ubaidullah Bashiruddin. Now, Mr. Ubaidullah Bashiruddin was very busy, and he didn't have much. When I told him I'm looking for, some college and books about this where I can, he was busy and he didn't have much time for me. So he gave me some pamphlets and, but behind him was a very handsome young man dressed all in white. And that man, he said, wait. And he brought me a book, and he brought me this book here. I don't know if you can see it. He brought me this book right here. And sometimes I know Razi asks, Brother Razi asks, what kind of books should you converts read? Well, for Muslims, this is the book, Invitation to Ahmadiyya. Brother, if you're a Muslim, you need to read this book. So he gave me this book, and the young boy's name was Daud Ahmed. Daud Ahmed, who later became the Amir of America. God bless him. Assalamu Alaikum. Jalsa. So I had this book with me on my journey to Europe. By the time I got to Europe, I'd finished reading this book. I said, man, because I didn't know who, the book had been published in 1962, and I didn't know who this man was, Mirza Nasir Ahmad. I'd never heard of him before. And so I said, and he was asking, are there not some Muslims out there who will join me in helping to restore the glory of Islam? And I said, I got to find this guy and help him to restore Islam. And that was my purpose in going to Germany, and I was looking for this gentleman. So there were, at the time, now, I have to back up for 1 second. When I got to Germany and I got to Frankfurt, now I knew there was a mosque in Frankfurt called, I think it's called the Nur Moschee. I never forget, it's number 25 Babenhäuser Landstraße. Babenhäuser Landstraße Nummer 25. And so I went there, but the imam who was there, the missionary in charge, Anmari, I think his name was Anmari, Ilahi Anmari, something like that. Anyway, he was undone by my story. I mean, at this point, I was escaped from prison. I was wanted by the FBI for draft evasion, and I had just come out of Africa, and I looked pretty rough, I would imagine. So keep in mind that this was 1974. Wait a second, 73. Yeah, this was 1974. And so the Ahmadis were already all nervous about, what was going on in Pakistan with the new laws against them. And anyway, he didn't want me in his mosque, his bottom line. So there was a young engineering student named Mahdoud, who took me to a youth hostel, and they paid for 3 nights for me to stay in this youth hostel. Well, I'm used to being free, and I wasn't staying in no youth. So I stayed there one night, and I left, and I stepped in the park. But crossing the bridge, crossing the Main River Bridge, I had a good American passport, but it wasn't really my name. It was, so I had some underground connections, and the people helped me with this, and so I had a American passport. This is pre-computer, you know what I'm saying? I had a passport, but not with my name, my picture, but not my name and my real thing. And so I had seen in the Holy Quran that God says, tell those who believe to call on me because I answered a prayer. And I decided that even though I believed in Islam, I wasn't really 100% convinced. So I decided that I would give a test. So I took this passport, and as I crossed the Main River, thinking about Napoleon and what's the brother's name who conquered Gibraltar, Ibn, whatever his name is, who burnt the boats and when he reached Spain. I took the passport and I threw it in the Main River, and I determined I will never again tell a lie. And now it's up to God that I'll go to the American embassy, I'll surrender myself, and maybe I'll be in prison for 10 or 15 years, but I'll still be within, maybe in my early 40s, and I can come out and I can preach the religion of Islam. I went to the American embassy. They took all my information and told me to come back in 2 days. So I was sleeping in the park at the time. I had absolutely no money. So one Turkish brother saw me praying, and he invited me to his house. He was a very nice brother. May Allah bless him. But the Turkish people, they love lamb. Now, I don't know if you, this was a bachelor. He lived in the basement, and he loved himself some lamb. And boy, that lamb is tough. And so after one night there, I said, brother, alhamdulillah, jazakallah, but I got to get on. And so I went back and slept in the park because the smell was too much for me. So anyway, I went back to the embassy, and they said, come back. And they asked me some more questions, what elementary school I went to, who my elementary teacher. I mean, they asked me everything. So I told them everything. So they said, come back in 2 days. I came back in 2 days. They said, okay, we almost have it. Just give us till Monday. Well, that made more than 7 days. And I remembered from hearing that, 7 is a big number. So I said, well, maybe that they don't, this is not what God wants me to do. So I left Frankfurt, and I hitchhiked back to the town where I was actually born. I was born in Germany, right? And I went to the city hall there, and I told the woman there that I need my birth certificate. She said, "Where's now? If you don't know Germany, I assure in Germany you can't move from one apartment to the next without what's called Polizeianmeldung. You have to register with the police, right? They have a real fashion state in Germany." So she said, "Where's your identification?" I said, "Well, look, I don't have it. I'm a wanderer, I don't. So look, I was born here. This is my name. This is my." She said, "No, it's not possible. It shouldn't be possible." An old woman opened up the door who stuck her head. She must have been the supervisor. She said, "What was your grandmother's name?" I said, "Kate Yukaman." She said, yeah. Ich kenne dich doch. I know you. Yeah. I know you when you were a little boy here. And so with this woman, who I know was ready to die tomorrow or retire from her job, with her concurrence, I was given my birth certificate. With this birth certificate, I went to Hamburg, got a driver's license, and finally, in 1974, I think August or so. Now, what happened was the missionary at the time in Hamburg was Hyder Ali Zafar, who became the Emir of Germany for a long time. But he was a young man, and when he heard my story and all, and of course, remember, I don't know what's going on. I have never heard about Ahmadiyya. I mean, it was just a name to me. I thought they were a bookseller or whatever. And so I used to go to that mosque in Hamburg, but nobody, and at that time there were like about 4 Pakistanis. There was one Abdul Latif, who was one of the first missionaries in Germany. There was Hyder Ali Zafar. There was one old Baba, I can't remember his name. And there was one ex-missionary who had quit being a missionary, and there were like 4 or 5 Pakistanis. The rest were Malaysians, Indonesians, Africans, Nigerians, Ghanaians. Mubarak Osekwasi was getting his PhD in microbiology. I remember that. And so that was a very small little Jamaat. And I used to hear the word Jamaat. And so I asked, "What is Jamaat?" They said, "It means community." So, and there was a picture of the 3rd Khalifa, Hadhrat Mirza Nasir Ahmad. So I said, "Well, who is this man?" They said, "He's the Khalifa." Now, in Africa, they believe in holy people. So I said, and they believe holy people have power. And so I said, "This man, he's a holy man?" They said, "Yes." I said, can I ask him to pray for me?" They said, "Yes, write him a letter." So I wrote him a letter, and I said, "Dear sir, I am one of your members of your Jamaat in Hamburg, Germany." When Hyder Ali Zafar saw, he said, No, you're not our member." I said, "What are you talking about? I come here every Friday. I come here during the week. I pay even money to help with this." "Well, of course I'm your member." He said, No. So he showed me a bayat form. Now, I want to also point out, nobody tried to convert me. I don't know if they thought I was already an Ahmadi. I don't know what they thought, but nobody ever talked to me about Ahmadiyya. Anyway, I had been reading the books of the Prophet Messiah, peace be upon him. I had been reading Jesus in India. I had been reading Where Did Jesus Die by Maulana Shams. I had read The Split, The Truth About the Split, and some other books, and I used to read when the Prophet ﷺ used to say, that I am so and so, or Allah has revealed to me, or so on. I took it with a grain of salt because what do I know? I mean, I can't. If he says it, okay, but he seemed like an honest person, and although it seemed, I mean, I had no such experiences, so I just took it like that. So then Hyder Ali Zafar left, and the missionary Malik Mansour Umar, or Mansour Malik Umar, I used to call him Malik Mansour. He came, and he immediately asked me to sign by it. So by that time, I was ready. I was ready to sign. So I signed by it. I believe it was in August of 1974. So then, at some point, Mansour Umar asked me to go to Rabwa to attend the 1975 Jalsa. Well, I didn't know what that was, but what it was is that I had seen at this time, starting in the summer of 1974, a lot of young boys from Pakistan would come to the mosque in Hamburg almost every night. They would be all hours of the day and night. You'd hear somebody knocking on the door, Assalamu Alaikum, Assalamu Alaikum. And they couldn't hardly speak English. They couldn't speak any German. And all of them were running away from Pakistan due to the 1974 decree. And so I used to take them to get them registered with the police, with the immigration, to help them find housing, and because I could speak German, and so it was a wonderful time for me. I felt, fulfilled. So then I watched them, and now you have to take what I say with the understanding of the time. These boys had never been to Europe before, and now they were being exposed to. I mean, there's a place in Germany called the Reeperbahn, and you don't want to go there. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to go there. So these boys were being exposed to stuff that they had never seen in their life. They were hardworking. All of them were working, getting jobs. They couldn't speak English. They couldn't speak German, but they all somehow got jobs and worked. And in general, they were good. But they did not possess that odor of sanctity that I saw in the books that I was reading. And so when the missionary told me, why don't you try to go to the Jalsa, which I had no idea what the Jalsa was, I wanted to meet this Khalifa because even though I had signed Bayat, I wasn't 100% convinced that Ahmadiyya was the ultimate truth that I'm going to devote my life to because, hey, I only got one life, right? And so I went to get a German passport. Well, of course, when this is now you're dealing with the federal German government. I had a driver's license and a birth certificate, but I had no history that they could check on me to see who I was or what I was. But I had all the documents required by law for a passport. Well, they wouldn't give it to me. So December came and went, and it didn't look like I would be able to get a passport to go anywhere. Finally, I decided I would try one more time before I give up the idea. And so I went to the place and I said, look, do you have my passport or not? And the guy was real rude. He said, he cursed, and he went to the bottom drawer. He pulled out my passport, my German passport. He picked up my passport. He threw it on the table. Here, he said, here. And so I had the German passport. With this passport, by the grace of Allah, I hitchhiked. I had 500 Deutsche Mark. So I hitchhiked from Hamburg through Austria, through Yugoslavia, through Greece. By the way, when I got to Yugoslavia, when I got to the Bosnian part, I was blown away. I didn't know that Yugoslavia had that many. Every hilltop, and Bosnia is a beautiful country, mountainous and hilly, and every hilltop had a beautiful minaret and a mosque, and I was very surprised. And so anyway, I hitchhiked from Hamburg through Turkey, then from Turkey to Iran, and Iran to Pakistan. Once I got to Pakistan, I finally made my way to Rabwa. And here, I see that the clock is running. Man, Brother Razi, you might have want to cut into me here and give me some guidance. But so anyway, the missionary told me, he said, now when you get to Lahore, don't tell anybody that you're going to Rabwa. Buy a ticket to Sargodha. He said, but when you cross the Chinot River, he said, get down. So I got to this train station like early in the morning, like 4 o'clock in the morning. The place was big and dark, and I couldn't read anything, and I was obviously lost. So a man with 2 women in full veil approached me, and he said, can I help you, sir? And I said, yes, I'm trying to buy a ticket, find the ticket counter to Sargodha. He said, Sargodha? You want to go to Sargodha? I said, yes. He said, where are you from? I said, I'm coming from Germany. He said, are you an Ahmadi? I said, yes. He was also an Ahmadi, and he bought my ticket, and he guided me, and He rode with me to Rabwa, alhamdulillah. So when I got to Rabwa, I was supposed to go. The missionary said they will meet me. Of course, when I got to the train station, 7 o'clock in the morning, there was nobody there. So they said, where do you want to go? I said, I'm supposed to go to Molana Abu Lata. Okay, so one Tonga man. Now, by this time, I'd had some experiences in Lahore and then on the way coming, and I was fed up with Pakistani people. And I was pretty sure when I saw Rabwa, this is 1975, when I saw Rabwa, it was a dinky little town. I mean, I don't know how it looks today, but in those days, it was a humble village, I'll put it like that. And a lot of mud houses and stuff, and and so dirt roads, and so he took me, and I was just, I mean, I thought, man, I've wasted my time coming here. And I'll never forget that the house was a humble house. It had a blue, heavy wooden door, and I knocked on the door, and when the door opened up, I saw a man, Malana Abalata, Jalandri. And I said, man, I was speechless. They say that the face is an index of the mind, and that the eyes are the mirror to the soul. When I saw this man, I knew that I was in the right place. Because if this man was not the Khalifa, I couldn't even imagine what the Khalifa must be like in terms of spirituality. So he invited me in. His daughter fixed me a wonderful breakfast, which I've never forgotten. I've never tasted anything like that in my life. And after a few weeks, I was introduced to, they said, wait, you will meet the Khalifa, he will meet you. Now, I am so blessed that had I come during the Jalsa, I would have been with the American delegation and we'd have shook hands and Hazur would have said, but by this time, this was like February. There was nobody. There were only two foreigners in Rabwa. One, Dr. King from University of California, maybe Santa Barbara or someplace like that. He was doing a research on Ahmadiyya, and myself. And so after a few weeks, they said, okay, one day this Mulvi Zegem came, and he said, Hazur, and he was a real tough talker. He'd been in New York, and he'd married an African-American woman, and he knew all about America. He said, what do you want to say to the Khalifa? And he was real tough with me. And I said, look, I want to serve Islam, and so on. So we got to the door. Now, Hazur's office in Rabwa was also a very humble place, So we got to the door, and all of a sudden, this Mulvi Zegem, who was talking tough to me, he almost, I was shocked. He turned into like a whimpering. He like, oh, Assalamu Alaikum. He knocked on the door, and he became a cringing little creature. And I was surprised. What the heck is? And the door opened up, and I saw for the first time the Khalifa of that time, Hadhrat Mirza Nasir Ahmad, may Allah exalt him. And it was the most important event probably of my life, and also the most devastating event of my life at the same time. Important because I immediately realized I was in the presence of the divine. Not that he was divine, no, but that here was a man who was infused with the Spirit of God. And I was crushed because I immediately knew there is no way that I am worthy of being this man's servant. And so I started to cry, and I don't know, Hazur held me in his chest, and I mean, he just patted me like I had no control. And those of you, some of you have mentioned these things, all of you know who have had this experience, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So I couldn't talk. So after Hazur calmed me down, and to be at the embrace of the Khalifa of the time for, I don't know, I couldn't control myself. I don't know how long he was trying to, he kept patting me, it's all right. So finally, after I was able to control my emotions, he said, "Now tell me how you got here." I said, "But don't tell me, from there." He said, "Tell me, go backwards, go backwards in time." So I told Azur all my story. We spent not quite an hour together. So at the end, he said to me, I asked him, I said, "Do you want me to surrender myself?" He said, "No, there's no need." He said, "Allah has forgiven you." He said, "Go out and live a good life. Maybe you could become a doctor." So, but because he said that, so I have been studying, by the grace of Allah, I call myself somewhat complying with his instructions because I've tried to study homeopathic medicines, and you know I'm a somewhat of a homeopathic practitioner, and I can fix your nose, your runny nose, if you have constipation and those things, or if you're a woman you have hot flashes, I can hook you up. So, but meeting the Khalifa was an overwhelming experience. And I know that Brother Razi, he wants to try to make people understand what it's like, but you can't. It's not something that you can transfer over. My time is running short, and let me just say that after I left, I stayed in. I didn't know I didn't know what to do. Because I knew I couldn't be a missionary. I really wasn't worthy of doing anything. And so I had to find I applied to college in Lahore to study Islam, and that didn't work out. And finally I went back to Europe, and Alhamdulillah, God is good. The doors opened up for me. I was given a wonderful job as a representative for a German oil company. I was given a brand new car, money. It was like, unbelievable. And many of my Pakistani friends in Nigeria used to think I was a CIA agent because, I was flying back and forth and whatnot. And I didn't have any apparent means of income or sources of income. But, anyway, everything happened, alhamdulillah. So, but remember now, I'm still new, and I'm still learning this thing about who are these Pakistani people. And, as a person who was a revolutionary and for whom racial injustice was a big motivator, having to learn to understand and deal with my Pakistani brothers who come out of a Hindu environment, who come out of I'm a Sayyid and I'm a Khan and you're a Malik and you're a, so there, and I want to say this to my African American convert brothers. Look, anybody can join Ahmadiyya. So you have to understand that these are all just people. Most of your Pakistani brothers have never read the books that you've read. And so you're shocked when sometimes you see them doing things or behaving in a way that you, man, this is not Islam. Well, you don't worry about them. Guide them if you can. Now, you have to try to guide them because it's your responsibility as an African American Ahmadi convert to help your brother. Islam teaches things, you can speak, you can hold him by the hand, don't knock him down, but just speak gently with him and let them know because they really don't know. I'm telling you, they don't. Sometimes they will say and do stuff this, it's just part of their culture. And so you have to teach them with kindness. Don't be like me and be hard-hearted on them. I was pretty rough on some of my, but as I've gotten older and understand myself better and them better, I've learned how to try to teach them better. Some will accept, some won't. But remember, it's not about anybody. It's about you. You and your relationship with God. And as Hazur said, and all of you need to, Pakistanis and African Americans and everybody else, you need to read the Detroit speech that Hazur gave, the fourth Khalifa, Rahimahullah. He explains it all. I know some years ago, my wife and I, we drove around the United States to small towns. We did small town tabligh. We go to small towns in Montana, North Dakota, and so on. So in Portland, one Pakistani gentleman, he asked me, he said, brother, he said, when you go to these towns, how you can talk with people like this? I said, brother, when I pull into a town anywhere in America, I'm the only person in that town that can help these people and save them. This is the attitude and mentality that all Ahmadis, white or black, Pakistani or otherwise, you must have. Remember the first Khalifa, Rahimullah, when he had Hazur sent him someplace, and I don't know, he didn't have the right clothes. He just had some, what they wrap around. And people said, look how you're going to see the governor of England or whatever. Look how you're dressed. He said, I'm the representative of the Masih. Huh? So this is the thing. We are the representatives of the Khalifa of the time, and we are the spiritual children of the Messiah of the age. And we are fortunate to be in the first 100 and some years of that event. So I have seen companions, even though I didn't know how to properly value, I have actually shook the hand of a hand that held the hand of the Prophet Messiah. So the situation that the world is in today, the situation that we're facing, it's a long march. It's not going to change overnight. Look how this pandemic has come and turned America and most of the world upside down. And there is yet more to come. You see this book? A Message of Peace and a Word of Warning. Written by the third Khalifa. He gave this message. The reason most Pakistanis don't know this book is because the speech he gave in London in 1967 in English. So most Pakistanis, especially of my age or a little bit younger, have never read this book or heard of this book before. That is why they don't act in accordance. Now, I wrote a little book some time back. It's called The Gift of Ahmadiyya. I hope some of you will try to get it and read it, because I'm giving you information. I'm telling you what's going to come down. Not my words, the words of the Prophet ﷺ. The Khalifa of the time has warned us. He's written letters to every ruler of the world, warning them that if you don't change your way, this is what's going to happen. There will be a third world war. Ahmadis say, oh, brother, we are like the people of Jonah. We have to pray. But Azhar Hanif has already explained to you what happened with the people of Jonah. They actually repented. I don't know if Ahmadis of this generation have repented or not, but I guarantee you the next generation of Ahmadis will be very repentful. So I don't see Brother Razi stopping me here. And I think I can go on for 2 more days, brother, but I think
Jazakallah, brother. Really, really inspirational story. I enjoyed every minute of it, especially when you mentioned your mulaqat with our beloved Khalifa Hadhrat Mirza Nasir Ahmad, may Allah have mercy on him, and that you even met Maulana Ataullah Jalandi Sahib, which is really surprising. I had never thought that you were so close to such great personalities who we look up to till today. Alhamdulillah, great story, dear brother. In the end, if you want to give any short message to the viewers of which books of promised Messiah lesson they should read to gain knowledge about Islam, especially, for example, based on your story, Noah's Ark would be a really good book for us to understand how a Muslim should live. But if you want to give them any other book to read, then we can end off with that.
Okay, thank you. Of course, I've already mentioned the philosophy teachings of Islam. But for everybody else, the book that I think, in my mind, once you have a little bit of understanding about Ahmadiyya, is called Lecture Ludhiana. So then he goes back to Ludhiana 14 years later, and he says to the people, he said, when I came to this town 14 years, now remember, this is 1903 or 1906, I think, correct me on that. He said, when I came to this town 14 years ago, he said, I was cursed as a Dajjal, as a kafir, as a disbeliever, all these things. He said, and all the mullahs and people, they were cursing me. He said, but today, He said, at that time, I had a small handful of followers, maybe not more than maybe 300. He said, but today I have more than 300,000 with me. But, and this is what I want everybody to grasp. He said, in the future, my followers will number in the hundreds of millions. Now, what more do you want? When I traveled from, I rode a motorcycle. Let me back up. In 1976, I hitchhiked from Tamale, Ghana to Gambia. At that time, Tamale, Ghana was the last place where I could get shelter from Ahmadis. Ouagadougou, Bobo Dioulasso, all these places, there was no Ahmadiyya. A few years back, I rode a small motorcycle from Ouagadougou all the way to Dakar. I never traveled more than 200 kilometers in a day without stopping for the night in Ahmadiyya village. I stopped in one village and I went by the side road. I didn't take the main road. I went by the side roads. I stopped in one village. I met a young missionary. I said, brother, how long have you been here? He said he had just come from, graduated from Ghana. He said, I've been here for 3 years. I said, how many members do you have? He said, 11,000. You see, seeing is believing. So as far as the books are concerned, any book by the promised Messiah, salam, if you are a non-Ahmadi, the truth requires you to read something before you abuse. If you read and study and you say, no, I reject this man, God may forgive you. But you know the hadith that says when you hear, it doesn't say when you know, it says when you hear about the advent of the Mahdi, even if you have to crawl on the mountains in ice and snow, you should do it. And when you confirm that it's him, you should say salam. Why do you people? I have a neighbor, a Pakistani brother. He's a nice man. He lives 5 minutes from here. I invite him to the mosque. I said, brother, come on and just sit. He said, no, you people don't pray like we do. I said, brother, who told you? Have never been. Who told you this? He said, my friends have told me. I said, brother, do a test. See if your friends are telling the truth or if they're liars. Just come and sit and watch. You will know your friends are telling the truth or not true. Up till today, he has refused. What can you do with people like that? So leave them. Leave them. This is not for them. We Ahmadis, we want everybody to accept. I have spent hours and days and years preaching to people I love and who I want them to understand, but they don't. And as Allah told the Holy, would you kill yourself for this? I mean, you can't. It's not my duty. You will have this experience. You will meet beautiful people. You want them to accept and understand, but they won't. And it'll break your heart. But you have to let them go because their condition is in the hands of God. That's all that we can do. And I think I've taken up too much of your time. And
no, brother, Jazakallah, really, really inspiring story. In the end, we pray for all the viewers that they'll also learn from this interview like I did, and they spread it far and wide to the anti-Ahmadis, because especially the starting is really important for all such opponents to listen to carefully and to study the books of the promised Messiah. So in the end, we pray that Allah guides all the viewers to the true Islam and enables us to bring the change that Allah wants us to, and the promised Messiah and our beloved Prophet Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam expected us to bring. So dear brother, Jazakallah khair for your time once again. May Allah bless you.
Amen.
If you have not yet subscribed, make sure to subscribe and click on the bell icon so you can get notifications for every new video. Also make sure to like and comment on the video and follow on Twitter and Instagram.
سفينا صل على محمد